Herrera is a singer in between his two races and plays at friends' house parties. He also self-records his songs and posts them on MySpace under his alias Manor. Peaches is his biggest fan.
The two of them together seemed very impulsive. They kind of were led by the drugs and his love for music. They would just kind of go each day trying to find somewhere to play. He's not just Herrera's back these days on
It makes him ideal match for the 10-year-old Peaches. According to law enforcement, she comes from an Albuquerque family known for dealing in trafficking.
They were known in the area. They had been around for several years involved in circuit.
When I heard things about Peaches, her people, I never really heard anything to people that she associated with. The kind of people that set their hands, check fingers off to get information.
Peaches grew up around childhood program. She and Herrera easily fall into Albuquerque's rapid conflict scene. They spend most of the time partying and getting high.
Look at my boy. Look at that smile on his face. Big old smile on his face. Damn!
I never knew get stuck at some time.
Herrera is in a relationship with his friends and family, like Patrick and Dorothy. Close friends.
Peaches can go from sweet, innocent little girl to I'll stand in the back, put up the blood.
Yeah.
For Manor attendants eventually catch up with him. In May 2006, Peaches gets pulled over in a stolen car. For attempts to get away, Peaches his car, threatening the police officer.
There was an understanding that she tried to respond. She had a lot of violence in her back.
Peaches is charged with assaulting a police officer and is sentenced to 1 year in jail. Despite their boyhood romance, Peaches soon learns that the Herrera is seen on her. When she gets released in April 2007, she meets a man named Dennis and moves on. They get married a few months later.
She had married a family that had very strong ties to who the brothers also.
Her relationship with De Herrera is now distant. August 2007. It's been 2 years since De Herrera was released from prison. He's still on probation. He's partying at a friend's house in Albuquerque, but a fight breaks out.
They were arguing outside. House called, and they came in and started searching people.
De Herrera panics. If the cops find him in possession of a weapon, he's going straight back to jail.
Alicia went to 4 engagement parties. She's done. Here's a way, Alicia. Say I do to pretty sweetness. On cereal, that's the spot.
His credit card debt got me feeling like this
Late fees, receivables.
So when in debt, whether you're 10, 20, 30, even 50,000 or more in debt, there is a way to bring easy debt. In fact, freedom guarantees you won't pay a penny unless they can settle your debt or help you save money.
Now successfully debt-free.
I mean, that really was the right choice.
If you're feeling overwhelmed with debt, please include the for cost.
Contact Freedom now, so you can breathe easy.
With the new U.S. Bank Smart Business Signature Card, You can get 2% cash back on every purchase. Here's why you should switch from Google to DuckDuckGo on all your devices. With DuckDuckGo, you get a built-in search engine like Google, but it never collects your searches. And you can browse like Chrome, except it blocks most cookies and ads, so you're more protected from hackers, scammers, and data-hungry companies. And there's no catch. The browser's always free. Download the DuckDuckGo browser on all your devices today.
All right, let's go.
Set it all down.
Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go, everybody. Let's go. And you know the pastor over there at Little Cypress, Little Cypress Baptist Church, David Turner.
What's his name?
Last name is Turner.
I don't. We try not to, as Baptist preachers, we try not to get to know all the rest of them, because if they come over to our church or something, that's not true. Matter of fact, we belong to an association where all of us get together.
Got the Southern Baptist Association.
Yeah, I used to be Southern Baptist. I'm not anymore. I am now part of the BMA.
What?
BMA. That's the
Baptist Ministry.
what is it?
What Baptist Minister Association?
Baptist Missionary Association. And it's there's about 37 different types of Baptists. But this one, well, there's very few differences in them. It's just the Southern Baptists have about 5,000. The BMA has about 400. They're a lot smaller. And with the Southern Baptists, you send messengers to the association for their meetings. According to the size of your church, you've got 10 members, you send maybe one. You've got 1,000 members, you send, a bunch more. In the BMA, everybody has, that's it. If you've got 5 members, everybody goes to the messenger. If you've got 5 million members, everybody gets five messengers. So everybody has the same amount of authority, and I like that. They're way too dogmatic, because my wife and I are kind of Baptist-hostile. I like the Baptist polity, the way that Baptists do things. We have a business meeting once a month, and everybody knows the business of the church.
Minister, can I use one of these pillows in that chair because it hurts my back?
Well, yeah. Here. But then we also believe in all of the gifts, because I can't find anywhere in the Bible that says all of the gifts have been gone away. Place in the Bible where it says that these gifts shall pass away, but love will never pass away. And a lot of people say, well, see, there's no gift. That's all about when you get to heaven. All these other gifts are not needed. Don't need any of those gifts. And since God is love, then that's so, anyway, that's how I see it. We still have 2 minutes. 2 full minutes. Well, we'll get started. I'd like to tell the folks over at North, I know that sometimes we get we get started a little bit later than your clock says over there, but we're going by our clock over here, and I think it's a little bit slow on the uptake for you guys over there, so I apologize for that. But we need to make sure that we've got our sign-in sheets. Make sure you got those, got them filled out, got your name on there, and make sure that it's legible so that it can be read. Make sure that you have your book with you this morning. We're going to go over one thing there for emotions. Today we're going to finish up on our anger thing that we were doing yesterday. And we have from 6 more. We did 6 yesterday. We're gonna do 6 today. And when we're finished, when we get them all done, we'll quit. So we may get done early. We may not. We're still using the same board. Little fella still kicked off this morning. Nothing happened last night to make him any happier. So we're gonna be talking about him this morning. Our goal again is to just learn how to deal with our own personal anger issues and what type of anger that I have. Different types of anger cause us to react in different ways and need different methodologies to help us deal with that anger. So this morning we are moving through the emotional health stages, and we're all the way down the very last one. And so that's a good place to be. We started out with denial and avoidance. We jumped over to where we had a little bit of insight. That happens every now and then. We get a little bit of acceptance that maybe I do have a little issue. Then we take some action. I need to go do something about it. As we take that action, it helps to build our self-esteem and healing processes. And so that's a good thing. Then we get to the place in our life where our emotional health is in a pretty good shape. We find meaning and understanding. We have a rational understanding of my emotional health. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect. That doesn't mean that everything is fixed. That means I know I have an issue in that area and I'm working on it. We're fully participating in maintenance. That means I'm going to see who I need to go see. I'm doing stuff. You don't have a... Can we get our sign-in sheets? You get a chance? We're fully participating in that. You accept the work you're doing as necessary for ongoing positive emotional health. So, we need to know that if we have an issue, we need to be working on the issue, and we also need to be allowing others to help us. Right? We need to be doing that. So, Yesterday we went through all of these types of anger that's out there that we treat. And so I want us to notice that one thing here that's pretty interesting is that usually every other one has some issues with it. We started out with the assertive one. That's a pretty healthy anger, right? That's a pretty healthy way to deal with anger. We moved over to the behavioral one, and that can be dangerous. That's where there's a lot of behavior that we're dealing with. Then we went back to chronic. Chronic is not a good, none of these are good if they stay a long time. And that's what chronic means. It stays a long time. It's just like any other disease in our life. And it's going to stay for a long time. However, it's not as dangerous as some of these others. It may be dangerous to me personally because it's going to cause some stuff in my life, but it's not as dangerous to other people. It's not explosive. But the next one is destructive. And remember, we talked about that type of anger is the end stage of behavioral anger. Behavioral anger is acting out, doing something crazy, doing something that's going to be dangerous, not only to ourselves, but to other people. But it's even more destructive than the behavioral stuff that's a problem to start with. Then judgmental anger, that can cause some issues and stuff, but judgmental anger is usually not one of those anger that's going to come out and cause somebody some real destructive stuff. And then we got down here to overwhelmed anger. And a lot of times overwhelmed anger can be kind of quiet anger, but it comes when somebody is overwhelmed. When you get overwhelmed in your job, you get overwhelmed in everything else. And life itself can become overwhelming, and then boom, something happens. So today we're going to start off talking about the others, and we're going to go through these as quickly as we can, with getting the information out so that we can use it. That's what it's all about. I need to know if I have an anger issue. Guess what? When I look back down through my life, every time that I had an anger issue, something happened, it didn't turn out well for me. So what I need is for that to turn out well for me. And so I want to know just exactly what type of anger that I personally am dealing with, right? And so this next one is pretty good stuff. So what is that? Passive aggressive anger. What is being passive aggressive? That's when we come off as being passive, as being helpful, and as being all of that stuff, but having an aggressive idea underneath it. Man, you look good today, but you should maybe get a haircut. That's passive aggressive. Man, I'll tell you what, I like the work you did, but I wish you could have done. So, and going to talk to somebody else. You know that Bubba over there, that's a really good guy, but he drinks too much. That's passive aggressive. If I go and say, that guy that's cutting the grass out there, he's doing a really good job of cutting the grass, but you do notice he scalped it a little bit on the side. We can't leave well enough alone. So here's the deal. Passive-aggressive anger is an avoidant form of expression. Is avoidance good? No, it's not usually. Sometimes I do avoid. Sometimes if there's somebody somewhere that I know is going to cause me an issue, I'm going to avoid that person. Because life already has enough issues in it. I don't need you giving me something else. And if I know that you're going to give me a load of something else, I might just avoid that person. But I can't avoid every issue that happens in my life, can I? No, there's going to be issues, there's going to be stuff, and I can't avoid every issue that happens in my life. As a matter of fact, I don't want to avoid every issue that's in my life, because the deal is, how do you grow? By experiencing these things. If you don't experience them, if you avoid everything that happens in your life, everything, whether it's good or bad, if you avoid it, you're never going to grow. You're never going to get better. You're never going to get to a place where you can overcome any of that stuff. And so we don't need to avoid everything. This kind of anger occurs when someone suppresses how they feel, then attempts to avoid all types of conflict occur. We can't avoid all. There's going to be, if you live long enough, there's going to be conflict in your life. You remember when you were a kid on the playground? Were there any conflicts?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. We had some conflicts. And that means we were just practicing for when we got into junior high, because there were conflicts. And then high school there was some conflict. And then, wherever else, life brought us some conflict. So it's got to be there. This can be dangerous, as self-esteem levels are often impacted by the anger. When the anger gets there, my self-esteem is impacted because it tells me I'm not able to deal with these little things that's happening in my life without getting angry. And so I use the anger to try to deal with the avoidance, and then that makes me have some self-esteem issue. And I'm going to tell you something. I had a guy tell me one time in class, he said, well, I'm all right because I don't have any self-esteem. Is that true? Now, we all have self-esteem. Some of our self-esteem is a little higher than other people's. I suffer from low self-esteem, but I will tell you, at this point in time, my self-esteem is high enough. It's where I need it to be. I know that I'm a powerful spiritual person. I'm confident in who I am. God loves me, and I love Him, and everything's going to be all right. So there are other people in the world right now, and I don't know why this is, but there are people in the world who don't like me. I know none of you guys fit that bill, but there's people in this world, something must be seriously wrong with them, but they don't like me. But that's okay. I can get beyond that. Our self-esteem are impacted by this anger. Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the right time to ask.
Well, sure it is.
I understand the connection between behavioral and destructive anger, but now we're past like destructive, is there just outright anger, like violent?
Yes.
Anger that just straight out like people get seriously hurt.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And the question I have in that, like maybe there's an adrenaline rush of anger. Is there also a dopamine release in your body that's something actually get pleasure out of that?
Yes. Yeah. He was asking about, the physiological changes that happen to us when we become angry. And in that place of destructive anger, there's a lot of people get killed and hurt and damaged and property that gets destroyed and all of that stuff. This is why we teach how to manage our anger. This is why we get to the place of trying to get our anger under control. And we have to be the ones to control our anger. And we do have a dopamine rush. A lot of us people are angry all of the time because they really enjoy having that opiate rush that comes into their brain because they're angry. We feel a sense of power, authority. I'm in charge. Nobody can tell me anything. And, we get a lot of that. And there's people who live for that type of action and that's why people are always doing those kinds of things, because they get that rush and they feel powerful and all of that stuff. So we need to know. That's why we study the different types of anger, so I can know which one is affecting me. And if I'm addicted to the chaos, then it's going to be hard for me to get away from that chaos. But if I understand that I'm addicted to that chaos, then I can do something about it. It's just about it's the same thing as a drug addiction. Yes.
So being addicted to that chaos, like there being a relationship, like getting off on hurting people, like there's trauma involved in that. Maybe that where people have a lot of trauma in their life. Maybe trauma bonded to a person and to feelings.
Yeah.
Like that sort of that anger, that rush or whatever.
Exactly, and that does happen. And when he's talking about being trauma bonded, and I happen to have a couple right now that's exactly that, young man, young woman, and they're trauma bonded. And it's a bad situation. But here's the deal: if we understand it, what would we do if we had a situation where had a traumatic event and that we are using anger to get beyond that traumatic event? What would we do about that?
Maybe pray.
You can pray. I think God can take care, and I know God. I don't think God. I know God can take care of all of this mess that's in our lives. But beyond that, and here, this is one of those places where, as a clinician, I would say, okay, you are beyond my scope of practice, and I need to send you to somebody else. I want you to go to somebody who is a trauma expert. I want you to go to somebody who is a trauma anger expert so that you can be helped in that area as well. Because that's a place where I don't need to go, but you are going to necessarily have to go there. So you need to go down the hall to the therapist or even outside the building to the psychiatrist or something to help you deal with that type of trauma. And so, we need to work on that. Every type of anger that we have has a solution to it. There's no type of anger that doesn't have a solution. But the solution may not be within the scope of the Sundown Anger Management Program. It may be somewhere else. Sometimes medication is needed to help with some of that stuff. But that, again, is beyond our scope, so you have to go somewhere where you can get the stuff that you need. But we need to also be at the place where we understand that whatever the anger is, if I can't, I'm going to go talk to my counselor, I'm going to do these things, I'm going to go walk through those steps that we have, and if that works, great. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to go somewhere else and seek help in a different area. I don't need to give up because somebody at this level says, I don't have anything for you. Then the next level may have exactly what I need. Or the level after that. There's more than one level. And that's why we have people who are counselors, other people who are therapists, other people who are psychiatrists, and levels like that, because we may need to move into a deeper level. That's a good question. I appreciate that. I don't know how well I answered it, but I appreciate it. Passive-aggressive anger, which can be verbal, it can be physical, it includes emotional repression, avoidance of conflict, and therefore resolution of issues. That means, look, I'm going to avoid it. What does that mean I'm doing? You're avoiding the conflict, you're also avoiding the resolution. If I'm going to avoid the anger issues, I'm avoiding whatever it's going to take for me to get beyond that. And whatever my anger issue is, I need to know what's going on with me, and I need to figure out what the resolution is. And then what do? I either resolve the issue or I remain angry. See, it always comes down to me if I want to. There's a lot of people who are angry people, and they don't want to resolve the issue. They don't want to do it. They want to stay in that because what is that? What is anger? A lot of times, anger is my major coping skill. Just like for me, alcohol was my major coping skill. Somebody hurt my feelings, I drank. Somebody made me angry, I drank. Somebody said something nasty, I drank. If I didn't feel good, I drank. If I felt good, I drank. It was my major coping skill, right? And so the same thing is true for anger. When I've got that coping skill, there are people out there who really don't want to get rid of it because that's my major coping skill. When you say something, do something I don't like, then I respond in anger and I get my way and people leave me alone. If you go to the store, go down to Market Basket or H-E-B or Kroger or something like that, you see a young mother with about a 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid, and they look like a little wombat, and they're going crazy and all of this kind of stuff. And I've seen a lot of them put the kid in the basket and give him a Twinkie. Yeah? So what has the kid just done? He used anger to get his way. And what happens to us a lot of the time, just like with alcohol and drug abuse, we get to a place where we're using that anger the rest of our life, and we suffer from arrested identity development. What does that mean? I started getting my way when I was 7 years old. I started getting my way when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I started getting my way by the use of anger, right? And so my identity does not mature. It hangs on at that stage. So how tall are you?
6 foot.
6 foot. How much you weigh?
40.
All right. Well, so if you are suffering from arrested identity development, then you are 6 foot, 240-pound, 8-year-old. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. So when we get angry, we respond like an 8-year-old. We were all here when the guy went through the building. Did he look like a full-grown man? Did he look mature? Did he look like he had himself all together? No. He looked like he suffered from arrested identity development, right? Because he was acting like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, maybe a 12-year-old. Yeah, So that gets really dangerous. So what we need to do is deal with that anger at the first time we can. When your kid gets angry in Walmart or all of that kind of, don't give them a Twinkie. Don't give them a Twinkie.
They're that backside up.
Well, yes, sir.
I got a picture of my phone now with my great grandma. She got married at her grandma. So get what? I couldn't take this picture, send it to your mom. Get on straight that page seven because she know mama don't expect it. She get away with grandma. Stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You get away with grandma a lot. So this is keeping us from resolving the issue. And if I don't resolve the issue, guess what happens to the issue?
It's still there.
It's still there. It can get bigger. It can grow up because I know if I get angry, other people are going to avoid me. I don't want to be around an angry person because somebody fixing to get hurt. I don't want to be around an angry person because they're going to do stuff, say stuff that I don't want to be a part of. So most people will give an angry person. And so if I'm angry, then I know that everybody's going to get away from me. I can be by myself. I can do whatever I need to do, and I can feel powerful because I'm able to do those things. Now, this may present itself as passive-aggressive comment. Now, passive-aggressive comments go from positive to negative. Positive to negative. Yeah, so it starts out like, I like your outfit, even though it doesn't fit well.
That's a big dude, right?
Yeah, it is, but that's passive-aggressive. Man, I like that outfit. It would look good on somebody that fit. Yeah, And so that's kind of crazy mess. I heard a lady say, I like your haircut, but they cut it a little too short. What? And then the girl's going, huh? So it started out as a compliment and ended up as a gig me. So that's passive-aggressive stuff. Yeah, I have seen people, I've had this happen to me, where people would say, hey, this is fantastic work you've done here, and then later on, the work is missing. It's just gone. I've had people shred my work before. That's passive aggressive, but on an even higher level than just saying something stupid to me. It's passive aggressive if I come and say, "Hey, this is just good stuff," and then when you turn your back, it's gone. And so that's passive aggressive stuff, and it can get more and more deep and dangerous. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
So, like in the growing anger, someone may be walking around chronic anger.
Right.
They're just typically fucking pissed off. Right? They're just typically pissed off all the time.
Right.
And maybe that physical, like this internal symptom of that is being judgmental, having judgmental, but can come out like in comments, like a passive aggressive, like boy, glad you showed up to work today, but you look like hell.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So the question I have is, all this can lead up to something becoming behavioral, or they become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because behavioral and graduates from behavioral to destructive, where they're just so pissed off that they have this outburst of violence. So another question I have is, that's a question right there. So another question I have Are there different? Is it possible that there's different triggering events in these stages of anger, where something keeps setting off, or the same thing or something similar? And is that has this triggering event? Is there be treatment in there for the triggering event?
Sure, all of that. Yeah, the first thing is first we talked about that when we first started the thing is that some of this anger can lead to other types of anger, and you can have in your situation more than one type of anger, but there's usually the one major type. And if we can figure out what the major type is, then we can deal with that, right? And if we can deal with that, then that's going to help you. Also, there are triggers that that's going to happen in your life. And what we look for is just like with drinking, we look for the warning signs. I need to know my own warning signs that I'm about to get angry. And one of the things for me when I was dealing with anger a whole lot was this type of passive aggressive behavior. I would feel, I would notice in my own self that I'm becoming more passive aggressive. I'm doing stuff just like you said. Man, man, I'm glad you made it to work today. It's fantastic that you're here. Really needed you to be here. Too bad you were late. Maybe we can work on that. But passive aggressive is where I'm going to tell you something good, but what I really want to do is get you a little bit. So I have this underlying anger thing here that I have to service. And so I'm going to say something good so that maybe you won't go off on me or something like that, but I'm going to get you a little bit. And to your other question, that can build into something else over a period of time. But most of the time it won't. That passive aggressivity is bad enough and it'll stay there. And as long as that satisfies my need for power, I'm okay with that. Some people need for power, they have to have the destructive anger or something like that in order to satisfy that need. But as long as this low-level stuff can satisfy my need, I'm going to be okay with that. It can grow. So I need to know how often should you be angry? What's a normal person? How often do we get angry? Say in a week's time, how many times did you get angry during that week?
2 times.
Twice? Two times during the week? Anybody else?
I say about 3.
3 times during the week?
It depends on the level of anger.
Depends on the level of anger?
Yeah, I mean, everybody can get annoyed or frustrated and be angry about that. And, if you recognize it, it's just a little bit,
right.
I mean, you think about it, you realize that, it's not going to be, you don't need to have a great reaction against it. You can laugh at it because, there's not going to be anything in a week's time, you won't remember it. Right. And then you're angry because, somebody hit your wife. Or you're angry because somebody really said something rude to you that was out of order. So it's proportional to the events that go on, throughout that week.
I think that's true. Anger is proportional to the things that go on. But the other thing that you said was you can be frustrated and stuff like frustration. Is frustration anger?
Yeah, slightly, yeah.
Well, it's a second cousin to anger, but it is not full-blown anger.
Okay. I would go with 0 because in my vocabulary was anger. I might get upset once or twice, but that's up to you to let that escalate to anger.
That's
you know
true. That's true.
So,
I will tell you.
Upset.
That's true. Joel was saying that he gets frustrated but not angry, and can people tell the difference? Sometimes people can tell the difference. They can say, "Hey, Bubette over there, they're frustrated."
But if you find yourself frustrated often, and it can lead to being overwhelmed, so that some small thing can set you off.
Exactly. So if I'm going to live in the frustration.
Right. So the thing to stop yourself becoming overwhelmed is to recognize it, address it immediately at the level that it needs to be,
right.
And then let it go. Because that was what I had to work out for the longest time. Because I had to go through anger management, things like that. I was letting everything build up, and then somebody could, spill coffee somewhere or accidentally bump into me, and I was just go off.
Right.
So I just learned how to respond appropriately at the level that's appropriate for what's going on. It stops me from going to that overwhelm thing.
And that is a good point that the lower level we can deal with it at, the better. Yeah.
I agree with what he's saying, you know, like I said, I started off with said it's about the level of frustration of it. It's the same person, same things. But okay, yeah, it's gonna ride you up to it. You know, it's all about you, I think, and how you deal with it. Stress, frustration, getting upset. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, like I deal with him all the time. Like I was playing serious stuff, and he just laughed. I'm just having fun with him. You know? But he could get upset, you know. He could blow up. That's why I try not to do it too regular. Once a month, you know. Just saying. Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know, something like that I can see, but
yeah,
I guess it's just your level of tolerance, I guess.
And there is, and I can tell you, in this group, I have watched the group, you know, and there's a couple of people in here that are frustrated on a regular basis. And look, that level of frustration that they're in is that far from being angry. And I've heard them say things, do things, move quickly, do things that I'm saying, okay. You know, that person may need to be looking at whether or not and I've had, you know, we say, y'all have an anger issue. And I have probably most of the group, there's one or two guys that are just too lazy to raise their hand in here. But most of the guys will raise their hand. But the whole time they've been here, I've not seen one outburst on them at all. So what they're really saying is, I do get angry. They don't have an anger issue. Ain't nobody going. But there's one or two people that I can almost guarantee you on a daily basis. That's got to stop. I'm not going to. Every day. So that's a little bit of something that may need to be addressed. May need to take a look at. And not by me, but by you. You know, we need to look at that ourselves. So look, we're going to do that. Sarcasm or an intentional lack of response. That means you come and say something to me and going to be quiet. I know that there was a guy that I was his boss, and I don't know. I really, to this day, I can't tell you what happened. But at lunch, you know, we were out at the prison, and at lunch, we all went over to the ODR to eat. And so I went and got my plate of food, and Mike is sitting right over there. So I went and sat down with Mike. He didn't say one word. He got up, got his tray, and walked off. And he went and sat down at another table. It's not like he was through eating. He just didn't want to eat at the same table I was at. So that's passive-aggressive, isn't it? He didn't say anything to me. He didn't say, you know, I hate your stinking guts. You're a terrible boss. He didn't say any of that. He just picked his tray up and walked off. So that was passive-aggressive. Yes.
Well, sometimes the rest of that kept unsaid, but then he could have been going through something. He just wanted to get on with it.
Well, all of that is too. You know, yeah.
So it would be rude for him to ask you not to sit here because you're free to sit the way you want to sit. So this way he was
you can't start my
So what is that though? That is a good excuse for bad behavior.
That is distorted thinking.
It is distorted thinking. And it's a
you
good excuse.
He knew what he was thinking and what he was feeling.
Sure. You know, if he really wanted to be alone, he wouldn't have been in the mess hall with 35 other people. You know, he wouldn't have done that. He'd have stayed in his office or got him some food and taken it back. You could get a sack lunch. You could do all of that kind of stuff. He was being passive aggressive in the classical sense. Yes. You know, I can't hear you. Put your hand.
For example,
I can see your mouth. I read your lips. But
for example, the gentleman that got up from sat down, just got up, right? And it's like, okay, that's passive aggressive. But
yeah.
What if it's a Kobe's? Because he's pissed off at you. He doesn't want to yell at you. He doesn't want to tell you what he thinks because he knows he has a tendency to pop off at the mouth, which could be behavior, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then what appears to be passive aggressive. Maybe you see like, I'm not capable of doing this right now. So he picks up his tray and leaves.
Absolutely. What he said is maybe the person is using it as a coping skill. Could that be true?
No.
Does that make it any less passive aggressive? It is still a passive aggressive action. So even if he's, look, like we talk about all the time, looking for a good excuse for bad behavior, that's not something a person should do. That is insulting, that's hurtful, all of that stuff. So if I'm going to do it, I need to know what that is. That's passive aggressive behavior. Now, if I don't want to yell at you and use it as a coping skill, I shouldn't be using passive aggressivity as a coping skill. I should have a better coping skill than that. All he had to say is, "Excuse me, doc," and get up and walk off. So it's still, even if he's using it as a coping skill, it's still passive aggressive behavior. And so, look, we don't need to point it out in other people. If I pointed that out to you, that you got up and walked out, that's passive aggressive behavior, what would that be? Passive aggressive behavior on my part. Now, I don't need to be pointing that out, but I need to know it about myself. So I'm not going to do that. If I'm upset with you, I'm going to first off talk to you. We're going to figure it out. But if I feel like I can't sit there and eat with you, okay. Like you said, I don't want to scream and yell at somebody. I'm going to do all of that stuff. But I'm going to say something before I leave. I'm going to get up and leave. But I'm not going to make it obvious because there's 35 other people. Everybody in there's already dead. So that was passive aggressive.
I feel like it would be all right to make it obvious. He can make it obvious where he's saying that to you. He made it obvious to you because some could have been already happened, relating to you that you might not know about. You could be did something to him, and you just come and sit down. So you might not be aware that you've been. And he might be a person that don't like wrong confrontations and things like that. Like I say, if you weigh 250, what that comes to is hardly a squeeze.
Yeah, we can make all the excuses for passive aggressivity that we want to.
When he got was it anything you would do to him?
But the point is that he had a reason to not be happy with me. But the point is that's passive aggressive behavior, and we need to understand that it's passive aggressive behavior because we might be involved in that. We need to be, we need to be cautious about. We need to know that that's there so we can deal with it. How many people do you know that want to hang around somebody that's passive aggressive? That's horrible. I'm not going to fool. If you're passive aggressive, I'm going to tell you, you'll notice that in about 20 minutes. A conversation 20 minutes long will identify a passive aggressive person. Once I've identified that person, then I'm going to gently, kindly, and with great love and respect find a way not to hang around them. Because that's really hurtful. Yes?
And that's what I was going to ask. Like, what's a solution that's not overwhelming? Let's say I'm mad at Daryl.
Yeah,
right?
I am too.
And so and I still want to be a part of the group, right? Or as an alcoholic, one of my kids is here, and I go to the wedding and there's alcohol. What's the solution? That's like, okay, I'm at my kid's wedding, and I just got to get the fucking face. I got to get out of here instead of going. Just whether what's the solution?
Well, here's the deal. The solution is to understand that I am operating in passive-aggressive behavior. Now, here's the deal. If something like that happens, I go to a party, I go to my son's wedding. I went the other day, I've told y'all probably 30 times, to my daughter's birthday party, and they threw it in Tio Juanita's, and I was there 10 minutes. I let my son-in-law buy my dinner that day, so we got it to go. And I'm walking out, and my daughter walked out with me. She understands. Daddy's in recovery, and Daddy ain't staying in this place because, there's booze flowing like water and all of that stuff. Daddy can't stay here. So she knew that. So we got up, and we got out of there. If you do it one time, that doesn't mean you are passive aggressive. That means that you are protecting yourself from your disease. That's intelligent. That's smart. If we really do have passive aggressive tendencies, first off, we need to know we have them. We need to know we're operating in passive aggressivity. The other thing we need to do is exactly opposite to what we've done in here today. We've had about 15 different excuses why passive aggressivity is okay, and it's not. So whatever excuse you can come up with, What if this, what if you, okay, that doesn't matter. If that person does that every time. Now, what this guy that Mike, he was a good friend of mine. I ticked him off because he didn't do something right, and he picked up his stuff and he walked off. He was not a passive aggressive person, but that was a passive aggressive move. So here's the deal. If you do something passive aggressive, doesn't necessarily mean that you're suffering from passive aggressivity. But if you do it all the time, you're not going to have any friends. You're not going to have, and it's, look, indefensible. But we're going to defend it again. Go ahead.
Okay, now?
Yeah, you will.
I want to get into it. You finally went on game with it. Because you did say a while ago that he had a right to be upset with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would make you passive aggressive. If you knowing you done did something to tick this guy off, then you gonna come sit right there in his face?
Mm-hmm.
That what you're gonna do? And he did the next best thing to be there. Get up and remove himself from this situation because he was already upset with you about something previously. I don't know if he had ticked you off or you had ticked him off or whatever. Remember you said that?
Yeah.
So when you come sit in front of him, now you jugging at me. That's the way I'm seeing it.
And that's okay because some people, what I was doing at that point in time, there were probably 7 other people sitting at that table. And so there was an open seat there. I sat down where there's an open seat, and Mike got up. I had no passive aggressive motives in my heart at that point in time. He might have seen it as that. But here's the deal. If I'm being passive aggressive toward you, what's the proper response? Passive aggressivity back? No. See, that's another one of those good excuses for bad behavior. If I know that I'm passive aggressive, I need to stop the behavior. It doesn't matter if what you're doing. We're not trying to cure you. We're not trying to work on you. Working on me. So if I'm passive aggressive and somebody that just cussed me out sat down at the same table with me, I'm not going to respond with passive aggressivity. And but we could always look. He could have, but he was working through. And the point we're trying to make, look, you come up with all excuses in the world, all good excuses for bad behavior. That's why people relapse. I know I'm not going to use drugs. I'm going in that neighborhood because, my friend lives down there. I'm going to the bar because I like to play pool. All of that's good excuse for bad behavior. For a fact, you've got no business in the bar. But you wind up in the bar because you convinced yourself it's all right. So I'm going to use passive aggressivity. I'm going to show these people what pieces of trash they are because they said something nasty to me first is a good excuse for bad behavior. And so, look, even if we have a good excuse for bad behavior is what? What is bad behavior?
Bad behavior is bad.
It's bad behavior. And so I shouldn't be doing bad behavior. Yes, Mr. Gold. What else are we going to say?
No. You make me come over with something. Like prime example. Okay, just like I got a brother. He used to be on the other side of the bar. Every time he went to the band, he went for drugs. And now he's sticking in church. He's a minister. Okay? Trying to become a minister. Okay, so now in his mind's eye, even though Moon Man, his pastor, has been down the same road. He even played pro football and everything. But he has his own church, my brother's on his students. Okay, we in the park. Man don't know, got the blues going on, whatever. Moon Man come through there, kick it with, it's a cooler over there. It's barbecue right here. And it's a cooler with water, juice, and everything else besides the drink. Moon Man come through there, hand don't know, nobody cursing, nobody disrespectful. But my brother feel like he shouldn't be there. Okay, wait a minute, let me finish this. Okay, now.
Here, let you ramble.
The people up in the church are supposed to be already saved, right? I mean, they're supposed to.
It's not what the word, not what the Bible says.
Who he's supposed to be seeking, you know what I'm saying? We the sinners, he's supposed to, am I wrong? Right? You feel what I'm saying? Yeah, you say, you supposed to, what would you look like going up there to the Jehovah's Witness trying to preach to them, even though you Baptist trying to get them? They already saved. We the ones who lost. You're supposed to be trying to tell us, preach one, teach one.
Do you have a point?
Yeah,
but
what you just said about the passive behavior and made a prime example, and I just thought about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That you say, okay, you're not going where they're drinking at. You're a minister. Okay? You
Yeah.
don't think you can reach somebody with your story?
Well, probably so. It has nothing at all in the world to do with that.
It's just your train of thought. You're not going to overlimit yourself.
And-
Once upon a time, you was in the same seat.
And look, if you want to go to the bar, go ahead. But I am not going to the bar. And that's not passive aggressive. That's just being smart. Because if you go to the bar, you ain't got a snowball's chance in Hades of making it. That's what I'm thinking about. I'd never been in that place before. I went in there, and it was what it was, and I knew I had to leave there. So we did. There's nothing passive aggressive about that. That's defending my sobriety. That's defending my recovery. So and the Bible never tells us. As a matter of fact, if you read the Bible, it tells you there's going to be a lot of people who are not saved. The Bible says, look, there's going to be lost people in the church. Leave them there. Leave them there. Yeah. So anyway, that's here's some of the things. Look, a lot of the time, this stuff is passive aggressive is most common in verbal form. Most people don't get hurt or when it just get their feelings hurt and stuff like that. But it can also look like closed off body language, continually procrastinating at work. That's passive aggressive. When somebody says you need to do this, this is your job, this is what we hired you for, and at the end of the day, it's not done. That's passive aggressive. So here's some of the tips. That's how we're going to deal with it. We've already been asked about this. Look, we need to recognize that there are unmet needs existing underneath my passive aggression. There's something under there that I need to know. There's a need that I have. One of the biggest needs is the need for recognition, for people to recognize that I'm doing well in something. We all need that. We all need recognition. What are they truly trying to convey? What am I truly trying to get out? What fears do I have about actually being honest about my needs? So a lot of these people who are passive aggressive, they're not able to be honest about it. Passive aggression tends to be, it's not always, but it tends to be rooted in attachment insecurity. What is that? I'm afraid you're going to leave. And that's mostly true for ladies. Remember, ladies use anger when they have a fear of abandonment. And so we use the passive-aggressive stuff because we have this attachment insecurity. I don't feel like, a lot of times I feel like you don't want to stay here, you don't want to be with me. And so I tend to respond to you in passive-aggressive ways, and that's more of a way of guaranteeing you to leave. Because nobody likes that. Nobody likes that. So trying to strengthen vulnerability with themselves and others can help manage this type of anger. It's okay if somebody feels this way. It's okay that if the other person has feelings. It's okay that I have feelings myself. Some of the feelings I have may not work well with you, but if they work well with me, that's the big deal, right? So, if they do get passive-aggressive, if you get passive-aggressive, you need to stop the cycle as soon as you realize it and repair immediately. If I know what I'm doing, and we ought to know what we're doing, if we just listen to ourselves. Sometimes we've done it so often, so much, that we don't realize what we're doing. And y'all don't get offended. But today, in here, we've done a lot of good excuse, bad behavior. And look, I'm going to tell you this. It's the same way. We don't realize that's what we're doing. We're just making a good point. This is a good point. But it's a good excuse for bad behavior. And look, we need to really dive down and figure out what we're doing, because usually what we're doing when we're coming up with good excuses for bad behavior, I'm going to need some excuses when I get out of here because I want to use again. And if I can come up with a good excuse for that bad behavior, okay. Some of us are really, really good at it. Some of us sleep through the group back there. Wake that man up. Hey, big group, wake up. Take your glasses off. Can't have sunglasses in the group. Can't see your eyeball. And, I had a guy the other day tell me, I'm not sleeping. Yeah, you're slobbering out, and snoring. So what is the next one? Y'all made me stay on that one the whole day. We ain't never gonna get that finished.
Now that's what kind of streets is that?
That is, y'all doing really good. Let me do it even better. You guys have done really well this morning, but you made me stay on this one too long. That's passive aggressive.
Well, that would probably be also one of the comments.
What'd you say?
So that's passive aggressive. That's also pretty common.
Oh, it is. It is pretty common. There's a whole lot of it. And let me say this, because I'm not over at North, and they can't do anything nasty to me. It's you. Passive aggressivity is more common in females than it is in guys. In guys, the more demonstrative anger is more common in guys than it is in ladies. So what is this retaliation? Well, I wish you would, man. You've almost made the whole group. We would not want you to have to go sit through the whole full group. Good great. Yeah. What was that? What was that I just did? Passive aggressive. That was passive aggressive. Yeah, please do. You just sat through half of the group, That's passive aggressive. And do I do that all the time? All the time. Nearly every group, I'm passive aggressive. So this is retaliatory. That's a T there. This is retaliatory anger. What is retaliatory anger about? Getting back at somebody. Anybody out there you need to get back at? Yeah, look at that. We can always figure somebody's always done something to somebody. Yeah, somebody's always doing something, and I can get back at them. So retaliatory anger is a common reaction. It's an instinctive response to being attacked. That means if you punch me in my head, guess what's finna happen to you? Monkey see, monkey. You finna get punched in your head. That's what's gonna happen to you. That's just me, but that's retaliatory. Got up there behind me. See? It's an instinctive response. That doesn't necessarily mean getting punched upside the head, just somebody saying something and pointing at you. Now, I'm not going to say who it is. There's somebody in here has a habit of pointing. Yeah? Your mama tell you don't point at people. Yeah. Sir? We're looking at it. Yeah, I have that. I will point. And I do apologize for that, but the reason I'm trying to make a point by pointing, and I know sometimes that's not, it can come across the wrong way. I do understand that. So, it can be influenced by a need for revenge after a perceived hurt. Yes, sir.
Okay, retaliatory anger. In some instances, that's acceptable and normal. I'm asking, well, to protect yourself and stuff like that. It's just not coming back a week later and slugging him because it's slugging him before.
Well, here's the deal. We're talking about anger that stays all the time, anger that we are operating in on a more than normal basis, right? If I'm retaliating 3 times a day, that's not good. Even if I'm yelling at somebody because I'm retaliating because and the word is perceived. They may not have done anything to me, but I think they have. And so I'm going to do something to them. My wife and I, this was a long time ago, we were on our honeymoon, and we went to the great big old city of Galveston for our honeymoon, stayed in a hotel there. And so something happened at that hotel, and it was a pretty big old hotel, but something happened at that hotel. One of the guests had gotten angry at some of the people who were running the hotel. You know how stuff happened. God took care of us. We spent the night, nothing happened. But when we went outside, there were probably 7 or 8 cars. I was skipped over, probably because it was 25 years old, But everybody's tires were slashed, stabbed, and poked. What was that? Retaliatory anger. They went in there, they got angry at the management of that place, they went out and slashed everybody's tire. That was in retaliation. That made no sense at all, did it? No. So, yes, sir.
We didn't get retaliatory spirit right, so say the mean that you get.
Say it again.
Explain the retaliatory.
What about the retaliatory?
She got the spirit right.
Yeah, because I got it. I got it right out. Retaliatory.
How the women gonna say we let you get away with anything?
Yeah, I didn't personally.
Yeah, fix that out.
R-A. Let's just waste all the time. Let's just do that. We don't need to class. We've gotten already. We got angry yesterday. So let's take a look at this. Retaliatory.
On the board, we can't see that. That's your guy.
There's the I right here.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice machete.
So what do you think that is? What was displayed right there?
Passive aggressive.
Well, a bit passive aggressive, but also retaliatory anger. Because he was doing all of the stuff, was doing all of that. He knows that he was the one I was talking about. So he had some. I got to get back at him because he went and got the thing.
That's why I got the dictionary.
I got the dictionary because when you first came, when you told us how the ladies don't let you get away with the spelling.
Oh, they don't. Yeah.
So that's why I said we gonna make sure we.
That's why. No. That's why I moved over here.
Go over there. They can't say.
So this kind of anger is usually deliberately aimed at someone who hurt you and can be influenced by a need to gain control over an event. Did you see that? See, Mr. Gold? Retaliatory anger. I need to gain control over the event. Shut down the whole group to make sure that I was doing it right. You got that hard. You got that hard, man. Guy.
But see, we were going to apply it when you get over there.
So, for example, we have seen some clients who've become angry, even though the actions were meant to help them. People perceive your actions as against them and retaliate. You may find yourself targeted by their anger, at specific people after feeling verbally or physically attacked, right? If I feel verbally or physically attacked, so I'm going to want to retaliate. Have you seen any of that? In here this morning we saw a little bit, but we also see that between staff. We see staff, client, arguing and fussing and fighting and cussing at each other. That's retaliatory. Because if you say something that I perceive as being against me, then I sometimes feel like I need to retaliate. So how are we going to do that? We help the person identify what they are hoping to achieve by retaliating against somebody else. We're going to lead that person to really play this desire out in the mind. Why am I doing? Why does it matter? Why am I doing that? Why am I beating on people? Why am I coming against everybody? And so here's the deal. We need to build into our anger the specific time boundaries that's going on. It's sometimes helpful for us to really distinguish why we want to attack. Why do I want to get back at that person? What's the deal? Most of the time we got our feelings hurt, and we don't want anybody to know our feelings hurt. As men, we're going to respond in some type of anger. Doesn't have to be the explosive anger that we see on TV, but some type of anger. Passive aggressivity will come alive. Retaliatory passive aggressivity or something is going to come alive at that place. So look, it's going to make us want to do this. It can also be valuable for us to normalize that fantasy. Why do I really want to get back at that? What they said, what they did, is that really hurtful to me? No, I'm going to tell you one of the best things that, and I do know that when we're coming up with good excuses for bad behavior, they're true, right? Those are good excuses for bad behavior. So they're true. They really are. But what we need to understand is the reason I beat on it so much is that's what we use to relapse. That we use that good excuse for bad behavior. So I need to understand I'm not making a good excuse for bad behavior. If I decide to relapse, guess what I'm going to do? I'm not going to look for a good excuse. I'm going to relapse. I'm 72 years old. If I want to drink, I will. All right? If I want to drink, I'm going to drink. Ain't nothing you can do about that. Same thing goes for you. You're a full-grown man. You want to drink, you want to use, there ain't anything in the world we can do about it. At this point, though, I don't want to. So I'm not going to look at a good excuse to get me in someone. And, think about that. My son-in-law called and said, hey, we're having a birthday party for my wife. That's your daughter. We're going to be at Tia Maria's at 6 o'clock. We need you to come. Is that a good excuse?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my daughter. I'm going to go to her birthday party. But I will tell you this, if that, if I had known what that was, my wife and I had been meaning to go. We don't eat a lot of Mexican food because it messes with us a little bit. But we've been meaning to go just to check it out, So we figured this is a good time to do that. When we got there and figured out what it was, then it was time for us to leave. But that's a really good excuse for bad behavior. But see, I don't need an excuse for bad behavior. Real quickly, our time has got up. So sometimes helpful for us to distinguish why we want to do that. Could be this is when we get into mindfulness. It allows us to recognize the risk associated with doing so, and we can do some behavioral changes in our life. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about one of the worst types of anger. But we're going to go ahead and take our break, and we'll come back at 15 after.
We'll be back.
Alright, there's gonna be another jail in the south. Y'all won't be another jail in the south.
You got a horse head in your bed when you ridiculous. Ridiculous. I know. Intention. Yeah. Hilarious. As an outsider. I just come out. I got some of these. That's the happens. Finally. What's that? What happened? I don't smoke them all. Fucking bring it out. Alright. I don't need to eat. I don't think I have the other.
No. No. Stop. Because that's position.
That's how they want to make.
Cynthia. Over Cynthia. Cynthia.
Want me to put the shit in there too? You throwing that too? I ain't doing something with you. Oh, like no. I just said, I said, that. So, I know that. Just all the time. Hey, 10, 10, 10.
Water beat. Get a water beat this should.
Thank you, man.
Any more?
Listen, they have any hand soap that we can put back?
I'm taking cigarettes that day.
Well, there was a bottle in there the other day, drinking barbecues and all that. Now it's been vanished like
It's gonna take a long time. Anybody else need TV?
you know what? I'll take a roll. Go ahead.
I think we need some in this one.
1,
It's horrible walking in here and all books and all notebooks look alike. Damn, article my copy of.
Self-abuse.
Don't have no empty bottle in the room. I could have read this if we had empty bottle.
No, that's the reason I'm asking if we had any. Those are.
Oh, they got to be good, but got to be. Maybe they have to have an empty bottle.
All right, we're going to get started back. All right, we're back. We've got 4 more anger types that we want to look at pretty quickly.
Think you'll be able to get through them?
Yeah, we're going to go pretty quick. Maybe. And look, wherever we get to, that's good enough. We'll get there, and then we'll stop. Self-abusive anger is pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
It is what it sounds like. This one, we should be able to identify it pretty well. Self-abusive anger tends to be associated with some type of shame. Something that has happened in our life that is shame-based. Does that apply to us at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that we have drug and alcohol abuse issues, that's not shame-based, but some of the things that we have done while we were in our addiction is shame-based. There's some stuff there that's happened. I know in my own life some crappy stuff happened, and it happened because I did it. So it has caused some shame in my life, and it has caused some shame, some self-abusive anger in my life, because I've taken a look at that, and when some stuff happened to me that wasn't necessarily a good thing that happened to me, I accepted it because I felt like I deserved it. Right? I would get to the place where I felt like it was okay for that to happen to me because look at all the mess that I've done. So I was kind of angry at myself. This type of anger is seen in people experiencing low self-esteem. And have I told y'all that I do suffer from low self-esteem? So we get a feeling of worthlessness. Anybody worthless? No, nobody that I know. I saw that little sign that said, God don't make no junk. So we're all, God loves me, and so that's a really, I'm not worthless. Or I'm not, it also gives us a sense of hopelessness. Self-abusive anger is commonly used to help cope with those types of feelings, even though it only pushes people farther away. If people don't tend to love me or like me as much as I feel like they should, that can lead to some self-abusive anger. And when I'm involved in self-abusive anger, that pushes people away even farther and deep seats that need for me to be angry with myself. Anybody here ever been angry with yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The fact that I use when I don't want to use.
Yeah.
The fact that I relapse when I don't want to relapse. The fact that I stole my mama's jewelry when she didn't have much at all. The fact that I stole my sister's money when she didn't have much at all. It didn't make much difference because I needed what they had. But boy, when that was over with, I was an angry person. When I sobered up and, I was angry at myself and, felt like I was justified in that, So self-abusive anger can affect ourselves both internally and externally. It can look like internalizing negative feelings, taking them out on ourselves through self-harming behavior. And there's behavior that's extreme sometimes, like some people are cutters. Some people will cut themselves. to feel better about themselves. It takes, when I have pain, it takes my thinking away from the shame and the remorse and the grief and all of the stuff that I've caused. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. It can be something like we're just, which is also extreme, but self-harming behavior. When I used the alcohol that I was using, was that a self-harming behavior? Yeah. Yeah. And whatever our drug is, whatever drug we use, it's a self-harming behavior because it's not good for us. And the other thing, like when I was drinking, I had this deal. I didn't eat when I was drinking. I was drinking, so I wasn't eating. Yeah, and I would eat mess, eat junk. Every now and then. The bars. I don't know if they still have them. I haven't been to a bar in a long time. But the bars that I used to go into, they'd have pickled eggs, and pickled pig's feet. And that's a full meal. A pickled pig foot and a pickled egg. I haven't eaten a pickled pig's feet in a whole bunch of years. I was working for Tidewater Marine, and we stopped to get a little something to eat, and I got a pickled pig's foot. And I'm eating that pickled pig's foot, and I had a guy next to me. He has passed on. His name was Daniel. Daniel looked over and said, "Hey, what are you eating?" I said, "That's a pickled pig's foot." He said, "It looks like an aborted baby." I hadn't been able to eat one since. So yeah. But they were really good. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they wash them before they pickle them, all of that stuff. So we do some of that stuff. Unhealthy, disordered eating. Unhealthy and disordered eating. I saw a thing this morning on Facebook where a lady went into one of those where you can eat all you want buffets, and she was standing at the buffet before she bought it. She's a big lady, and she's eating off of the buffet. Wow. Instead of getting a plate and going sitting down, she was just shoveling it in. That's disorder.
She was just getting a taste test.
She was just doing the taste test. I did understand that. Yeah, I said, okay, that's all right. So, that's on the inside a little bit. Our negative self-talk, we beat on that. Look, when you come to my little facility and stuff, we beat on that. We don't need any negative self-talk. No, you're not allowed to come in here with negative self-talk. We don't do that. And, you come in, we'll give you some positive things to say about yourself, and then you start doing that. But when we suffer from this type of anger, self-abusive anger, that's what negative self-talk is. We don't really realize that. We've done that all of our lives, but the fact that we're putting ourselves down, not leaving that up to other people who don't like us much either, they're putting us down and we're helping them do that. We're putting ourselves down as well. We don't need to be doing that because that is a sign of self-abusive anger. I'm just stupid. I had a lady that did that all the time. She would tell me, "Well, I'm not going to be able to do this." Why not? "Well, I'm just stupid. I've always been dumb. I'm one of them blondes that just, okay, you're not. As long as you say you are, guess what you are? You are. Yeah, you are what you say you are. So you don't walk around saying, "I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I can't do it, I'll never be a success, I'm always going to be a failure, I'm going to relapse, I can't do this, the sobriety thing ain't going to work for me, recovery don't work for me." No. We need to go the other way. I come to work in the morning making the profession and the confession that I'm a powerful spiritual man. I'm confident, rich, young, and good looking. And y'all may not believe that, but that's your problem. I ain't got the problem.
We believe you're rich.
I know it. What was it?
We believe you're rich.
Yeah, I'm rich. I'm young. Look, I know there's some people in my church that's 30 years older than me. Not really. There's some people in my church that are 20 years old. And I'm going to be 72 in November, and we have ladies in my church. One of them's 90.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the ladies is 90. Sir?
She still makes the church?
She makes it in church every time doors open. And, she's getting to where she don't look good. She goes like that. She's just barely walking, but, yeah, she's there. and she's got a little bit of money, and whenever we have a special something, she brings stuff. You know, so she's still there. She's still supporting, doing well. But yeah, so to some people, the point was to some people, I'm young. Yeah, and look, I shave this every morning. I know how good that looks. I don't care if y'all don't believe it. It's not important to you. It's, you know, when I said I was rich, young, good looking, he just about fell out of his chair. You know, here's the deal. It's important for me to believe it, right? It's important for me, not you. So I'm not going to walk around saying I'm a failure. I'm not a failure. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I know people that have done a whole lot better than I've done. I know a guy, I'm not going to tell y'all who he is, but that's not important, but he retired from the Navy. That's amazing. You know, to be able to, I was in the Army for 5 years, and it changed my whole life. This person retired from, been in 20 years. And then got out of the Navy and went to work for the state of Texas and retired. Sure got 2 retired. Rich like a pecan pie. You know what I'm saying? Man, you know. So there's people who have done greater things than I'll ever do, and that's okay. That doesn't make me a failure, right? It doesn't. So we need to understand those things. So, you know, so we don't need to go around. On an external level, this may include lashing out, attacking other people verbally. Because look, I'm going to abuse myself, and I like that person, so I'm going to say something nasty, stupid, and ugly to that person to drive that person out of my life. See how that can be self-abusive? Yeah, I really would like to be able to spend some time with that person, you know, so I'm going to go over there and say, hey, you know, I just think you ought to know this. You know, you're a real nice lady and all that kind of stuff. You're a real nice guy and all that kind of stuff, but you got a body odor. What is that? That's 2 different type, passive-aggressive, isn't it? And then by the same token, it's self-abusive. Because I want to be with that person, but I'm going to go there and tell them something nasty to drive them away from me. That makes it self-abusive, but I'm also using passive-aggressive anger at the same time. So we can do both of them. So here's how we're going to manage that stuff. The opposite of self-abuse is self-compassion. I've heard it said a whole ton of times, but we need to give ourselves a break. Look, let me tell you something. You're going to screw some stuff up. If you do anything in your life, you're going to screw some stuff up. You know, I mean, if you're a mechanic, you're going to break something. My dad was an alcoholic, but he was also a pretty good shade tree mechanic. People would bring their cars over, he would fix them. You know, pretty good mechanic. Also got frustrated, had some anger issues. And I remember one day he was working on the car, worked on it, it wouldn't start. He walked back in front of the car, he looked at it, he kicked the bumper, and then he took his hammer and threw it through the front windshield. Is that a good idea? What kind of anger is that?
Destructive.
It is destructive anger on one level, and it's also self-abusive anger. Can you see how it might be self-abusive anger? I don't know what he was going to get paid to fix that car, but the first thing he fixed was the windshield. You know, and whatever it took, whatever he you know, he had it, so he didn't make much money on that one. Self-compassion refers to treating yourself with kindness and love. A good self-positive confession. And I still hear it. I hear it from people that I talk to 30 days or more, and they'll still tell me, but I'm not going to lie about it. You know, well, you lie about everything else. You're a liar and a cheat. You know, you lie about everything. You told your wife, you told your husband, you told your children, you told God and everybody else. You've lied to everybody in the world, but you're not going to lie to yourself if it's liable to help you at all. That don't make any sense. But we've also come to the place where we've understood that it's not lying. It is my goal for myself. I'm a good man. What does a good man do?
You don't act like that.
You don't act like that. A good man does, a good woman does what? The next right thing. whatever that right thing is, the next right thing. That's what we do. And so, if I'm going to be a good man, and I'm professing to be a good man, that's my self-talk. That's my positive self-talk. I'm a good man. So I'm going to have to see whatever the next right thing is, I'm going to do that. The next right thing. That's really right, not something that somebody tells me that I know is not right. So we need to do that to ourselves. The way that we treat a friend that we really care about, that's how we treat ourselves. That's how we treat ourselves. So we need to use positive self-talk. Right? We need to be using it. We have grown up and become really accustomed to using negative self-talk. I've heard so many people just a little phrase. I can't do that. You can't do what? You can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But you can do all things. I watched a guy do brain surgery on YouTube. I can do that. I think they drilled 2 holes in this guy's head, and then they put one of the things out of his leg, a vein out of his leg. They brought it out on top of his skull, and then over it. So right now he got the vein sticking. I wouldn't want my vein sticking out of the head like that, but that's what they did. And I'm thinking, if I could get somebody in here just to hold still for a little while, I could do that. I can do anything. All it takes is training. You could too. All it takes is training. So I can do all of that kind of stuff. So we need to be using positive self-talk. So what's number 10? Well, we don't know. Silent anger. So silent anger, if it's not out there in the front, it's not abusing myself, not abusing anybody else. Is it dangerous?
Yeah, it could turn,
Very explosive.
especially if you keep it.
Yeah, could be. So silent anger is nonverbal, internal way of experiencing anger. Nonverbal, it's internal. We're going to keep it to ourselves for the most part, although they may not or we may not verbally express it. Usually, other people are able to read to understand that person is angry. That person is angry. They know when I'm angry. I may not be verbalizing it. I'm not in and out. I'm not keeping it out. A lot of times, this is one of those chronic anger issues. They're all the time, and we see it. People who experience silent anger tend to keep those feelings inside and allow them, like you were saying, to build up. And so they build up. Here's the deal. If you do something that makes me angry, if you do something, and I'm sorry I said that wrong, if you do something that I allow myself to begin to get angry, I'm going to go talk to you about that. Good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to go talk to you about that because I'm not going to let that build up. Because just like the name of my little thing there, sundown anger management, what does that mean? We already talked about it. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. That's biblical. We're not gonna do that. And if you wonder where it is in the Bible, it's right over here on the side. It says Ephesians 4:26 and 27. Well, let the sun go down on your anger. So that's what all of this is about. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let something build up. Because if I let it build up, it's going to be worse tomorrow than it is today. I've got a little issue with someone right now. Not in here, not Mr. Gold, not one of them, somebody else. I have a little bit of issue with it, and I'm thinking in my thinker, how am I going to deal with it? I need that. I can't let the sun go down on it, so how am I going to deal with it? So before I figured out a way for me to deal with it, it got dealt with by someone else.
You fixed the hole in your truck. Yo, Kev. I got it. Yes.
See,
He didn't say anything.
see, what that proves is what? Not only will anger build up and jump out, silliness can too. Yeah, yeah.
But it's a proven factor.
Oh, yeah, it's proven fact. Yeah. So here's the deal. People who experience silent anger keep those and they allow them to build up. They don't just build up on their own. We allow them to build up. We need to be assertive. I don't want us to be aggressive. I don't want you to come slap me upside the head because you didn't like what I said today. I don't want you to be really passive so you'll just sit there and let me tell you anything. I want you to be assertive about it so that when something goes on, it's dealt with right now. We don't let that hang out. We allow it to build up, which can lead to increased stress, which is a killer, tension, which is a first cousin to stress, which is a killer. That's what causes your muscles to hurt under stress. Behavioral related to overwhelmed anger. See, we're talking about those angers that overlap, that stay, you have one or more anger that's going on in your life, but the silent anger and the overwhelmed anger can run side by side. Silent anger can be internal or an external experience. This internally, this type of anger can create a buildup of uncommunicated frustration, anger, and resentment, causing undue stress, low levels of ongoing tension all the time. It's going to stay there with you all the time until that thing is fixed. And then externally, this type of anger, it can present as closed off body language. You talk to somebody who stands like this all the time. What does that indicate? They're closed, not listening. When I'm doing a session, we don't do that. And I've had people tell me the same thing 1,000 times probably, and I know that it's true. This is a comfortable way to stand. It is. This is a comfortable way to stand, but it's also indicating closedness, so we don't do it. So he's been closed off the whole session. He ain't listening to nothing. Yeah, that's it. So,
I'm actually listening.
yeah. So it can present as closed off body language, facial expression, restricted, minimal speech, or our tone when we're speaking to people. My wife is a lovely person, but as she gets older and older and older and older and older, the tone of her voice. It kind of sounds angry. She tell me, "Well, I'm not angry." Okay. So here's how we deal with it. Silent anger is not inherently wrong. Anger itself is not inherently wrong, is it? It is an emotion given to us by God to defend us and all of that stuff. So there's nothing wrong with it. And this is not necessarily wrong, but it may be necessary for allowing ourselves to process certain emotions safely. If I know, look, if you've said or done something, usually in couples counseling, one of the persons has done something or said something that's destructive to the relationship. The other person may need to just keep it quiet. If you're angry about it, just let it stay. It's self-protecting, and it can protect the other person, and it can protect the relationship. However, if they resonate with silent anger, it can be helpful to practice simply expressing themselves with one safe person. This is why we need to have somebody to talk to. My wife has several friends that she goes and talks to. She's got a lady that's her cousin that they have coffee and cake. On a weekly basis anyway. A couple of times a week, I call her up and I say, "Where are you?" "Barbara's house." "Oh, okay. She's at Barbara's house eating cake. Barbara makes a cake that she thoroughly enjoys, and so they go over there and have that. So, find that one safe person, and I'm going to tell you this: that it appears to be easier for that to happen with females than it is for males. because females are more communicative than are guys. But that's also a very real need for men. We need to have that one other guy or two other guys that we can go and talk to about stuff. Yeah. And we need to be able to do it. Now, we can be fishing, hunting, doing whatever while we're doing it, but we need to be able to do it. So we can also, look, here's another good thing with this type of anger is to write it out. And that goes back to the journaling thing that we've talked about a whole bunch. Just write it out. This is what I'm angry about. And you don't have to share that, whatever you write out, to anybody. You can get rid of it. So the 11th one, we're getting cutting down there, buddy. Number 11 is what?
Up to you, right up there.
Verbal anger. So, what do you think verbal anger might be?
Cussing somebody out, saying everything under the sun, possibly a little bit.
Cussing people out.
Yes, you can scream at them.
This is, look, verbal anger is an aggressive type of anger. And it can be dangerous. Here's the deal. You know, the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words, that's not true. That's a lie straight out of hell, because I tell you, words usually are more destructive than sticks or stones. You know, they are. You can destroy somebody's life with just a few words. So we need to be careful.
There's also, I know it says in the Bible, I forgot where, life and death in the tongue, which you say, which you speak.
It also tells us in the Bible that the tongue is an unruly member. That you can take a small thing and move a ship around and all of that stuff.
It talks about the bridle and the mule.
Yeah.
But the tongue is the only thing that cannot be taken.
Can't take. So verbal anger is an aggressive type of anger that can become abusive. Those who experience this type of anger are noted to feel remorseful after lashing out at the target of their anger, even apologize after the episode. Let me ask you something. If you're using nasty, ugly, aggressive language towards someone, but after it's all over with, you say you're sorry, is it okay?
Nope.
No, that didn't help. No, you still did it. Still did it. That person's still hurt. Doesn't make any difference. The only way to make a difference, don't do it in the first place. Stop it. Don't do it. You know, we need to get inside ourselves and say, what kind of right do I have to tell that person that? They need to know. Okay, if they need to know, do they need to know right now? Am I the right person? If they do need to know right now, do they need to hear it from me? Or maybe they need to hear it from someone else. Maybe it would be a little bit more effective, maybe a little bit more impactful if they heard it from their mama or from their other friend. But, maybe they don't need to hear it from me. Maybe I won't be able to deliver it in such a way that's going to be helpful to them. I might need to let somebody else do that. So verbal anger can present as lashing out, going off on somebody verbally, like you said, cussing them out, making up some new cuss words to apply to them. Specific behaviors can include loud shouting, threatening behaviors, sarcastic comments, continuous and intense criticism, ridicule. I think the other day we saw some of that. Intense screaming, cussing, yelling, I'm gonna, slamming stuff, a lot of that was verbal anger. Some of that was destructive anger, but a lot of that was verbal anger. So we need to see that. We know that. Specific, all of that stuff. Keep in mind that verbal anger can transition into verbal abuse and also keep them from being able to maintain stable, healthy relationships. Now, I believe that. I've been married for 52 years. I do believe that I'm in a stable, healthy relationship. It doesn't mean there's not issues, doesn't mean there's not problems, doesn't mean things don't happen every now and then. But for the most part, my relationship is stable. For the most part, it's a healthy relationship. Would you want to be in a relationship where you go home every day and whoever's there screaming and yelling and fussing at you? No. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell y'all this. I don't believe in divorce. You know, I think you ought to. You get married up, you ought to stay that way. I did, so you have to too. But I wouldn't stay in a relationship like that. Especially if I wasn't married, I would not stay. And I talked to so many people who are in those abusive relationships on both sides. Not only just the guy abusing the girl, sometimes the lady is the one doing the abusing. And so I wouldn't stay in a relationship like that. And having said that, I do know that there are issues. You know, some people have been in a relationship like that for 10 years, and there's children involved, there's homes involved, all of that kind of stuff. I do know there's issues, but if you have to stay in that, that's a horrific situation. I don't want to be somewhere where somebody is downrating me every day. I don't want to do that. So verbal anger, we need to know that, and if there's things we can do about it, it's important for us to realize that we can create clear boundaries for how they want to convey their anger. Instead of just having this verbal outburst and stuff, there's other ways for me to do that. Other ways for me to what does convey mean? Just to let people know. There's other ways for me to let people know that this is not okay with me. And guess what? That's a good, some good verbiage to use. You know, that's just not all right with me. That's not okay with me. We're not gonna do that. That allows me to make myself angry. So let's not do that. Instead of screaming and yelling and using profanity and all that kind of stuff, because that can be hurtful. And if it can be hurtful, then it can go over to being abusive. So you need to accept that it's not okay to criticize other people or to shout at them. It never ceases to amaze me. On this hand, somebody will say, "Well, I love that other person. They just make my heart go pity pat." All of that kind of crazy mess. And then the next time they're screaming and yelling and cussing and hoping they're dead and all that stuff. But this is just not okay. We need to know that kind of verbal anger is just not okay. So stop that. If we struggle with those patterns, we need to identify all of the reasons why we would like to change those things. Why are you struggling with that? You know it's hurtful. You know there's something going on there that shouldn't be happening. So why is it an issue for me? Why is it hard for me to change that? Shouldn't really be all that hard for me to change it. So we need to, what we do a lot of times, I'm sorry, I'm all choked up, is to journal again. We write down so they're easily accessible, especially during heightened moments, and then what we really want to get out of the relationship, how I want my anger to be understood. And then we get into the habit of pausing when we feel that anger coming on, take a break, regroup, and allow ourselves to reconvene when we are more regulated. When we get back, one of these days, we're going to talk about regulated emotions. How do you regulate your emotion? That'll help us a lot. So that's verbal anger. So what is the last one?
Unverbal.
Being very careful to spell it right. Yeah, volatile anger. Y'all see how it went from one that wasn't too demonstrative to one that is. It goes that way. On purpose, we wanted to be able to say, man, so volatile anger. There are some people with volatile anger. These are the people who come to me and say, I don't have normal anger. There ain't nothing I can do about my anger. I mean, I go boom and I'm angry, and I don't just get angry, man. I love to see people like that. We charge them dumb. Yeah, you know. You're a rager? Hey, you're going to pay, Bubba. I had one guy that, probation and parole sent him to our thing, and he get about, it's 14 sessions. He get about 10, and then he's gone. Ain't coming back. You can miss one session, it's no problem. You miss 2 sessions, you have to pay for those other 2 sessions. You miss 3 sessions, you can't come back. You have to start all over again. And so, he started that process because he's on parole or probation. So I forget what it was years ago. But he had to start that process over about 3 or 4 times. And you're just getting rich off me. No, we're not getting rich off you. But we appreciate your business.
Keep coming back.
Keep coming back. Now, here's the deal. Volatile anger is an explosive type of anger that is sometimes called sudden anger and is usually called sudden anger by the person who is experiencing it. We know it's not sudden anger. We know that person believes it's sudden anger, but we saw them get a little frustrated over here, getting a little bit agitated here, getting something else, and it's starting to build up, and then suddenly, boom, it's just like relapse. When we say, well, I don't know what happened, I've done fine, then no, you weren't. You were thinking about Bubba, you were thinking about using a beer, you were thinking about this, thinking about that, and it got to you after a while, and the end of relapse is what happened. So it's sudden anger. It can happen when someone experiences an annoyance, big or small, and explodes verbally or physically, potentially becoming destructive. So you see, volatile anger and destructive anger are riding together. So it's frequently destructive. It can include shouting, yelling, throwing things, physical aggression. This type of anger can keep us from having stable, trustworthy relationship. Ain't nobody want to be around you. If you're that kind of person, let me share with you. You're going to have an issue finding a healthy relationship. Nobody with any sense at all wants to be around somebody like that. We don't want to be around somebody. Look, not only can you throw things and bust things and break things, some of the things that you might throw, bust, and stew might be people. And when you throw stuff, guess what? It has to stop somewhere. And sometimes it stops upside somebody's head. Right? So people don't want to be around you. I've had folks tell me, well, I hate CPS. They took my children away. Sometimes children need to be taken away. We don't need children somewhere where you're using meth every day or cocaine every day and you're throwing stuff at people, because children get hit, they get in the middle of it, and they get traumatized, and the rest of their life is screwed up because I can't deal with my own anger. Okay, that's not true. Volatile anger can look like a rapid progression from status quo. What is status quo? Normal. What's normally going on? To outrage over real or perceived slights, just little stuff. It's frequently destructive and all of that. Here's some of the things we can do. Volatile anger is tricky. When we're dealing with it, it's tricky. It often feels so sudden, so intense. But if we continue to struggle with that, it means that we need more practice with emotional regulation. That's why we're going to go into, we're going to teach emotional regulation. We may need to have, what's emotional regulation? That's when I know I'm about to go somewhere. Then I go to my room, go to my office, go to the woods, go somewhere, and let that emotion regulate itself. Let it get back to where it is in a normal state of being. So we need to practice that some more if we still don't have a problem. We still have a problem with it. We need to get into the habit of regulating and identifying various emotions. What is that? That hurt my feelings. Why did that hurt my feelings? That made me want to get angry. Why did that make me want to get angry? Look at those things. We need to pay attention to what makes me angry, what I allow to make me angry within themselves. We need to pay attention to how it feels in your body before you react to it. Building that awareness offers a greater capacity to change those habits and is good material for a better lifestyle. So, questions, comments, or snide remarks? You got it all? You got it? It's all right? You got it? All righty then. Look, anger is a natural and normal thing. Sometimes anger can get to a place where it's hurtful. We need to understand, use that emotion the way God intended that emotion to be used. And if we're using it to hurt other people, that is not the way God meant for it to be used. All right?